Danielle lay motionless in her hospital bed, the rhythmic beeping of machines the only reassurance that her unborn child was safe. Across the room stood her husband, the powerful millionaire Thomas Sterling, whose smooth voice had promised to stand by her forever. Yet, in the hush of night, Danielle's eyelids fluttered just enough to see Thomas murmuring on the phone. Unaware she was listening, he spoke of betrayal, lies, and a hidden agenda that would shatter everything she believed in. Little did he know that Danielle heard every word, and she would soon devise a plan to unmask his dissay. It in a way he would never forget. Danielle Thompson had always believed in the fairy tale version of love. Growing up in the scenic countryside outside Charleston, South Carolina, she had spent her childhood wandering sunflower fields and dreaming of finding a knight in shining armor. Her parents, Mark and Evelyn Thompson, owned a small but well-respected bakery and instilled in Danielle the values of hard work, honesty, and loyalty. She carried those lessons in her heart through every turn of life. At age 25, she moved to New York City with high hopes and modest savings. She had no illusions that the world was easy, but she did believe that staying true to one's moral compass could guide anyone through dark times. And for a while, this seemed to be the case. She landed a job at an art gallery, her sweet voice and discerning eye catching the attention of artists from around the world. The gallery's clientele included the city's wealthiest inhabitants, some of the most influential movers and shakers of Manhattan. And that was where she first encountered Thomas Sterling. Thomas Sterling was known as the real estate tycoon with the golden touch. By the age of 32, he owned multiple skyscrapers, luxury condominiums, and had stakes in international ventures from Dubai to Tokyo. Whispers of his success spread through art auctions and high society cocktail parties. Those who didn't admire him envied him. Those who didn't envy him feared him. When he strolled into Danielle's gallery one crisp October evening, she couldn't help but notice how the room seemed to shrink around him. His imposing figure, sharpened by a tailored suit, commanded attention without him even trying. He carried himself with the casual grace of a king inspecting his kingdom. Naturally, rumors flitted about. He had dated top actresses, traveled with private security, and gambled obscene amounts at underground poker tables, always coming out a winner. Yet, as he approached Danielle that night, he wore the confident smile of a man who knew exactly what he wanted, and what he wanted was her. Their first conversation brimmed with chemistry. She expected him to be dismissive or superficial, but his voice was soft, warm, as though he was discovering a piece of art that only he had the ability to appreciate. By the end of the evening, he casually asked for her phone number. Despite the swirl of cautionary tales about men like Thomas, Danielle couldn't resist the magnetic pull of his attention. His compliments felt sincere, his manner disarming. In the months that followed, their romance sped along like a bullet train. Lavish dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, weekend getaways in the Hamptons, and front-row seats at charity galas, Thomas transformed Danielle's modest city life into something resembling a modern-day Cinderella story. She found herself starry-eyed, enamored not just by the opulence, but by the seemingly gentle heart behind Thomas's steely exterior. Yet even in that glow, small flickers of concern nagged at Danielle. She overheard hushed phone calls where Thomas's tone shifted to an unsettling coldness. He never explicitly told her about his business dealings or the true nature of his complicated finances. Occasionally, the mention of a woman named Julia Parker came up, a name that he quickly dismissed as an old friend. Still, Danielle, both confident and trusting, brushed aside those concerns. After all, love was about trust, wasn't it? It wasn't long before Thomas proposed, slipping a diamond ring onto Danielle's finger that practically screamed for paparazzi attention. Everyone who knew Danielle called it a real-life fairy tale, and in that moment, she believed it was. Long before Manhattan's dazzling lights and her introduction to Thomas Sterling, Danielle had lived a life grounded in humble aspirations. At 17, she dreamed of becoming a painter, someone whose work could move hearts and inspire the human soul. She would stay up late in her bedroom, sketching her future on canvases that absorbed her hopes and fears. After moving to the city, she tried to attend the Pratt Institute for a formal education in fine arts, but the tuition fees were beyond her reach. Instead, she worked multiple part-time jobs, waiting tables at a small Italian bistro, guiding tourists at a local museum, and eventually landing at the art gallery that changed her life. Throughout those early years, Danielle also developed a quiet resilience. Life in New York was never simple, and she encountered more than her fair share of rejection and heartbreak. A brief relationship with a fellow artist ended when he abandoned her for a European tour. The rent soared every year, forcing her to live in cramped apartments with paper-thin walls. But she never lost that spark of determination in her eyes. Each disappointment served as a stepping stone. Every closed door reminded her to push harder. It was during this period that she met an older mentor, Dr. Robert Jenkins, a professor at a local community college, who recognized Danielle's knack for storytelling through art. He offered her free auditing opportunities in his classes, explaining that formal education wasn't the only path. Raw passion was often more important. He encouraged her to channel her love of color and form in any setting. The sessions they spent together over coffee and discounted art supplies helped Danielle forge an identity that was true and confident. Despite her struggles, Danielle remained ever the optimist. She volunteered at a women's shelter every other weekend, helping survivors of domestic abuse express themselves through sketching and painting. It was there she learned the true meaning of emotional strength and the complexity of real-world relationships. So when Thomas Sterling waltzed into her life and expressed admiration for her artistic sensibilities, it felt like a vindication of her years of perseverance. Here was a man who not only recognized her talent, but was willing to support her dreams in ways no one else had. He connected her to influential art collectors and introduced her to philanthropic circles that funded community art programs for underprivileged youth. At times, Danielle had to pinch herself to believe that this was really happening. Was she finally living the life she had always fantasized about in those late-night sketching sessions? Yes, there were shadows. She noticed them in the distance, creeping behind Thomas's overly polished stories. But she told herself she was strong enough to handle any truth that emerged. After all, she had faced hardships before. This time she had love on her side, didn't she? Outside the swirl of Manhattan's glitz, Danielle's parents, Mark and Evelyn, offered measured support. They saw how happy she appeared, but couldn't help worrying that it was all happening too fast. Her mother voiced concerns that Danielle dismissed with a gentle laugh. "Mum, trust me, he's amazing. Wait until you meet him." Her father quietly nodded but reserved judgment. It was a significant leap from small-town bakery to high society, and Mark wanted to see how this fairy tale would hold up over time. Their wedding date was set. Without delay, Danielle began planning a modest yet elegant ceremony at a stately church on the Upper East Side. She wore the gown of her dreams, courtesy of a famous designer Thomas befriended during a gala. Friends and family flew in from South Carolina to witness what everyone assumed was the start of a blissful life together. And in the background, Thomas's phone rarely stopped buzzing with business calls and text messages that he insisted were unavoidable. Little did Danielle know that the seeds of deception had already been planted. The wedding took place on a breezy June afternoon, the kind of day that made Danielle believe the universe was smiling down on her. Clusters of lavender roses adorned the pews, while an organist played gentle melodies echoing through the church's high ceilings. Danielle walked down the aisle, her heart pounding as she caught sight of Thomas in a fitted tuxedo. He looked regal, every bit the prince she had allowed herself to hope for. Their vows were exchanged in front of nearly 200 guests, including city dignitaries, socialites, and a sprinkling of close friends from Danielle's quieter world. Everyone who spoke that day talked about the couple's magnetic connection. Thomas's best man, a suave investment banker named Daniel Wu, made a speech lauding Thomas's tenacity and generosity. Danielle's maid of honor, her childhood friend Sarah Greenfield, praised Danielle's big-hearted spirit. The merging of their worlds felt seamless in that radiant moment. After the ceremony, they headed to a grand ballroom reception at the Fitzgerald Hotel overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, and the sound of laughter and champagne glasses clinking enveloped the room. Danielle, radiant in her lace bridal gown, couldn't stop smiling. Thomas was by her side, whispering sweet nothings into her ear as guests danced beneath an orchestra's tune. It was, by all appearances, a perfect union. For the first few months, married life glimmered with promise. They moved into Thomas's penthouse on the Upper West Side, a sprawling home of glass walls, stunning city views, and modern art carefully curated to impress. Danielle set up a small art studio in one corner, finally able to indulge in her long-desired passion whenever she wished. Thomas, for his part, opened up about various philanthropic initiatives. He poured money into the city's food banks, financed cultural festivals, and sponsored an emerging artists' fellowship in Danielle's name. Yet as the honeymoon phase tapered, Danielle began to see cracks. Despite being physically present, Thomas was often distant. He'd lock himself in his study, holding private phone calls that ended abruptly when she knocked on the door. More often than not, business trips took him away for days, sometimes weeks, at a stretch. He would return bearing expensive gifts, designer handbags, rare jewelry, plane tickets to exotic locales, but never quite explained why he had to travel so frequently. Even more unnerving, Danielle started noticing a pattern in his excuses. He would say he was flying to Toronto for a deal, but receipts would show a hotel in Miami. Or he'd claim a business meeting in London, only for a housekeeper to mention she'd washed a Hawaiian shirt of his right before he left. Each time Danielle questioned him, Thomas brushed off her concerns with the same confident dismissals. "Darling, these deals are complicated. I have partners worldwide." Sometimes the paperwork says one thing, the real location is another. It's all business. And there was the matter of Julia Parker, a name that popped up far more often than Danielle was comfortable with. Thomas insisted that Julia was merely a colleague, someone involved in property acquisitions. But Danielle recalled the hush that fell over him whenever that name came up, as though he was tiptoeing through a minefield. She tried to push away the suspicions, telling herself that trust was essential in a marriage. Hadn't she promised to stand by him in sickness and in health? Tension simmered beneath the surface. Danielle felt the dissonance more acutely with each passing day. She couldn't pinpoint it exactly, but something about Thomas's life felt staged, as though he was directing a grand performance rather than living an authentic existence. Yet, every time she tried to approach the topic head-on, he skillfully deflected her, leaving her doubting her own instincts. Their social circle didn't offer clarity either. Thomas's millionaire acquaintances spoke in coded business jargon that Danielle struggled to follow. She'd watch them exchange knowing looks or sly grins when the conversation drifted towards certain real estate projects or hush-hush deals. Was it just professional secrecy? Or were they all in on some hidden scheme? Despite these swirling uncertainties, the news that Danielle was pregnant arrived like a burst of sunshine. She discovered it on a chilly December morning, the faint pink lines on the test jolting her heart with equal parts excitement and anxiety. When she told Thomas, he seemed genuinely delighted, lifting her into a joyous embrace. For a moment, Danielle believed that perhaps all those secrets would fade into the background. A baby might bring them together in a way that dispelled the shadows lingering around their marriage. But life rarely follows such a neat narrative. Instead, it weaves complicated threads that can ensnare even the most hopeful hearts. Pregnancy changed everything. Danielle's once boundless energy was channeled into prenatal care and preparing for motherhood. She spent hours poring over baby name books, researching the best strollers, and envisioning a cozy nursery. Initially, Thomas played the role of supportive husband. He accompanied her to a few doctor's appointments, making sure she had the best obstetricians in the city. With his wealth, he could buy her any comfort she needed: ergonomic rocking chairs, top-of-the-line infant cribs, even a designer changing table that arrived in 3 separate shipping crates. Yet, as Danielle's belly grew, so did the distance between them. Thomas's late-night phone calls became more frequent. His apologies for missing dinner morphed from somewhat plausible explanations to vague and half-hearted excuses. He brushed off her concerns about the baby's future with a single phrase: "We have plenty of time, Danielle. Let me handle the financials." It wasn't just the lies themselves, though they were growing alarmingly obvious, but also Thomas's demeanor. He was jittery, prone to sudden mood swings. On good days, he showered her with affection, massaged her feet, and whispered about the beautiful life they would share with their child. On bad days, he'd snap at her unprovoked, vanish for hours, and return with a forced smile that did nothing to hide the tension in his eyes. A chance discovery worsened her suspicions. While tidying up his office one afternoon, Danielle found a crumpled piece of paper with a note scrawled in hurried handwriting: "Meeting at the Grand Regent, Suite 2204, 8 p.m. She recognized the date just 2 days prior, when Thomas had told her he was in Boston on a day trip. The Grand Regent was in the heart of Manhattan, a 10-minute cab ride from their penthouse. That same day, while putting away laundry, she spotted an envelope stashed behind one of Thomas's seldom-used cufflink boxes. It bore the name Julia Parker on the return address, and inside were 2 tickets to a charity gala in Paris, scheduled for the next month. Tickets issued in the name of Thomas Sterling and Julia Parker. The implication was chilling. Fear, anger, and heartbreak pummeled Danielle in waves. She tried confronting Thomas that evening. "Thomas, where were you 2 nights ago? You told me you were in Boston. But I found this note: the Grand Regent, 8 p.m. What's going on?" He froze, then half-laughed, as if he found her accusation absurd. "Danielle, you're pregnant. Your hormones are all over the place. You probably misread something. Trust me, I have no idea what that note is about." His eyes narrowed as he added, "And as for Julia Parker, I've told you before, she's a colleague. We work together on complicated transactions. Sometimes we attend events side by side, nothing more." His dismissive tone cut deeper than any explanation could have. Whether it was betrayal or just secrecy, Danielle knew something was fundamentally wrong. The man she married, the one she had thought was her prince, was weaving a web of lies around her. She also knew that confronting him head-on wasn't likely to yield answers. Thomas was too cunning, too adept at misdirection. Though unsure of her next steps, Danielle resolved one thing: she wouldn't be played for a fool. She carried precious life inside her, and she would protect her child no matter what it took. So she decided to stay vigilant, to gather more information. Eventually, the truth would emerge, she was sure of that. And on the night she discovered Thomas's ultimate deception, she realized she was about to face the biggest fight of her life. It happened on a Wednesday night, in late spring, around her 6th month of pregnancy. Danielle had been feeling faint spells for several days, and the obstetrician advised her to take it easy. She tried to rest, but persistent headaches and a nagging sense of dread made it impossible. One evening, she nearly collapsed while preparing dinner. Alarmed, Thomas took her to Mount Sinai Hospital. The emergency department was a flurry of activity, crying infants, anxious parents, doctors, bustling from one patient to the next. Danielle was admitted for observation to ensure her baby's heartbeat was stable. A mild complication in her blood pressure readings warranted an overnight stay. As she lay in a private room, her eyes fluttering between consciousness and exhaustion, Thomas hovered by her bedside. For a moment, she felt relief. At least he's here, she thought. At least he cares enough to make sure we're okay. But in the early hours, long after midnight, Danielle awoke to the faint glow of a hospital lamp. Her eyes adjusted to see Thomas perched in a corner, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in a hushed, urgent tone. Without any outward sign that she was awake, Danielle listened. The conversation changed everything. "We can't push this further, Julia," he hissed. "I'm telling you, the timeline is compromised. Danielle's condition is messing up the schedule." A pause. Yes, I know. But can't you handle things on your end for now? I'll be back in the office soon. Just stop calling me here. She suspects enough as it is." Danielle's heart thumped so loudly she worried he would hear it. Julia Parker. She's not just a colleague, Danielle thought. Her worst suspicions confirmed. The conversation continued, peppered with references to offshore accounts, shadowy deals, and someone named Victor. Danielle's mind raced. She couldn't catch every word, but she gathered enough to know Thomas was neck-deep in something illicit, and Julia was his willing accomplice. When Thomas turned off the phone, he approached the bed. Danielle fought to regulate her breathing, pretending to be asleep. She felt his hand hover over her forehead, as if checking her temperature. Then he slipped out of the room. She heard the door click quietly behind him. Shaken, Danielle turned onto her side, eyes wide open. Her entire world was crumbling. This wasn't just about infidelity or secret business dealings. It was about a massive, orchestrated deception. She realized she didn't actually know what kind of man Thomas was. He could be an international criminal or someone laundering money through elaborate property deals. Worse, if these deals were going under, what would he do next? Danielle was carrying his child. Did he feel any genuine love for them at all? She was discharged the following day with instructions to rest at home. Thomas played the attentive husband role during the final paperwork, but she noticed how restless he was. The phone never left his hand, and he was visibly relieved once they left the hospital. He escorted her into a car, said a quick goodbye, and told her he had urgent business to handle. Before Danielle could reply, he was gone. As she sat in the back seat, the city's skyline loomed overhead like a silent witness. Danielle's suspicion hardened into resolve. She had enough. Enough of being lied to, manipulated, and kept in the dark while her life was potentially in danger. She looked down at her growing belly and felt a fierce protective instinct surge. If Thomas was entangled in illegal activities or planning something that could harm them, she needed to protect herself and her baby. But how? Thomas's power and wealth were formidable. Confronting him openly would likely end with him denying everything. She needed a strategy that would force the truth out of him, leaving no room for cunning denials. And so, the seeds of a plan began to form in her mind, a scheme that would require her to be more cunning than she ever believed possible. Returning to the penthouse felt like stepping onto a stage set for a one-woman show. Danielle paced from room to room, imagining the secrets hidden in plain sight. She pressed her fingers against the ornate wallpaper, rummaged through Thomas's study, and pulled open file cabinets in search of anything that might confirm her suspicions. As the hours wore on, she found partial evidence: bank statements with large sums transferred out of the country, cryptic emails referencing multi-party investments, and records of frequent meetings with Julia Parker in luxurious hotels. Yet, there was one chilling discovery that eclipsed all the others. Inside a locked drawer in Thomas's desk, which she pried open with a hairpin, she found a red folder labeled Project Dawn. The contents were a series of documents detailing an elaborate financial arrangement that involved buying distressed properties, inflating their value through fraudulent appraisals, and flipping them to shell companies overseas. The scale of the operation was astounding, involving millions of dollars. Julia Parker's signature appeared on multiple pages as a consultant, while Thomas's name featured as the main stakeholder. Danielle's head spun. This is beyond anything I imagined. She remembered stories of white-collar criminals who destroyed lives with paper trails. Her heart pounded, but beneath her shock lay a cold, firm determination. If these documents made it into the hands of the authorities, Thomas would almost certainly face charges. However, it wasn't just about the legality. The moral betrayal was staggering. She had married a man who might very well be orchestrating a grand-scale fraud. That night, Thomas returned home late. He moved about with caution, like a predator sensing a trap. Over a rushed dinner, Danielle finally confronted him. "Thomas, we need to talk. I'm worried about us and our baby. Are we safe? Is there something going on with your business that I should know about?" He sighed dramatically. "Danielle, I've told you 100 times. You're imagining worst-case scenarios. My deals are perfectly legitimate." He offered a half-smile, but his eyes darted sideways. "I know you worry, especially now that you're pregnant. But trust me, I'm ensuring our future is secure." A swirl of emotions coursed through Danielle: rage, betrayal, heartbreak. She bit her tongue, stopping herself from exposing what she had found. Something in her gut told her that if Thomas realized she had knowledge of his crimes, the consequences could be dire. Instead, she played the part of the docile wife, nodding and feigning relief. That night, as Thomas slept, she slipped back into his study and snapped photos of the Project Dawn files with her phone. It was risky. Her heart thudded so loudly. She was convinced it would wake him, but she had to secure evidence. She saved the images to a password-protected folder and then stashed the physical documents back in the drawer, making sure everything looked untouched. By dawn, Danielle found herself standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, staring at the city skyline. She pressed her hand against her unborn child and made a silent vow: "I will protect us from this web of lies, and I will uncover the truth, no matter what it costs me." In that moment of clarity, a plan sharpened in her mind. It wasn't just about confronting Thomas or turning him in. She needed something more foolproof, a way to ensure that when the truth came out, Thomas wouldn't slip away with a well-paid legal team or hush money. She recalled the conversation she overheard in the hospital, how Thomas had been reckless in admitting certain details. A faint idea sparked. What if she recorded his confession, gathered enough evidence to force him to face the law without any escape? Her father's old advice echoed in her mind: "Danielle, people can't wriggle free of their own words. That's how you hold them accountable." She smiled sadly at the memory, recalling a time when life was simpler and moral absolutes were easier to uphold. Now, however, she was about to step into a world of deception more complex than any dream or nightmare she had imagined. Confronting a millionaire husband with near limitless resources was no small task. Danielle realized she needed more than just stealthily snapped photos or partial recordings. She needed a scenario so controlled and dramatic that Thomas's own words would condemn him. But how to ensure he spoke freely? How to trap him into revealing enough to make him legally vulnerable? She mulled over various scenarios: secret microphones, private investigators, a well-timed ambush. Then she remembered an old story her friend Sarah once told her. A high-profile family feud ended when one spouse pretended to suffer a mental breakdown, prompting the other to let their guard down and speak openly. Inspired by this, Danielle began piecing together her grand ruse. Her performance would be threefold. First, She would stage an emotional collapse, planting doubts about her mental and emotional stability. Second, she would leverage Thomas's guilt to coerce him into a confession, ideally in a place she could control. Lastly, she would ensure the entire ordeal was documented. If she had to feign madness for him to let his secrets slip, so be it. The next morning, she made arrangements. First, she reached out to Sarah and confided in her about the deception, though she kept the specifics vague. Sarah would be her ally, someone who could vouch for her state of mind if things spiraled out of control. Next, Danielle contacted a lawyer friend from her gallery days, Julia Barnes, not to be confused with Julia Parker, who specialized in family law. Without divulging too much, she mentioned the possibility of needing legal counsel for a serious marital dispute. Barnes promised to keep her schedule flexible. To start the breakdown performance, Danielle stopped going to her prenatal yoga sessions and cancelled her usual lunch dates. She wore the same oversized sweater for days, let her hair go unwashed, and refused to leave the penthouse, claiming overwhelming anxiety. When Thomas came home, she greeted him with teary eyes and nonsensical mutterings about nightmares, and an unshakable fear that something was coming for them. She even let a few dinner plates slip from her hands, shattering on the floor actions that were partly fueled by genuine stress but amplified for effect. Thomas grew visibly concerned. No matter how distant he'd been, he wanted to maintain the facade of a supportive husband. He insisted on medical evaluations, but Danielle played the part so well, crying hysterically at the thought of doctors and medication that he backed off. Worried about the negative press if his pregnant wife was admitted to a psychiatric ward. He needed to focus on Project Dawn after all, and a major scandal would undermine his deals. "I'm just so scared, Thomas," she would sob. "I can't sleep, can't eat, I feel haunted." She would bury her face in her hands, peeking through her fingers to see his reaction. Each time, he would awkwardly pat her shoulder, offering false reassurances while never revealing the details of his clandestine activities. Yet, cracks in his facade began to show. Once, when Danielle woke screaming in the middle of the night, he snapped, "For heaven's sake, Danielle, you have to pull yourself together. I can't handle you losing it right now." His eyes flared, but he soon retreated, collecting himself. I'm sorry. It's just complicated." Yes, complicated indeed. But Danielle knew she was close to her goal. The tension in the penthouse had escalated to a near breaking point. Any day now, Thomas would slip, and she planned to capture every incriminating word. She placed mini-recording devices around the house, hidden behind potted plants, tucked into decorative vases, and even taped inside the cushions of her favorite armchair. She tested each device meticulously, replaying her own false breakdowns to ensure the audio was crystal clear. The stage was set. All she needed now was for Thomas to deliver his confession. The hardest part was waiting her nerves frayed, and the baby's steady kicks in her belly reminded her of the stakes. She had to succeed, no matter how terrifying the path ahead might be. Unbeknownst to Thomas, events outside his penthouse realm were also heating up. Whispers of real estate fraud had begun circulating in the upper echelons of Manhattan's finance world, where competitors and regulators alike smelled blood. Julia Barnes, the lawyer Danielle had confided in, discreetly kept an ear to the ground. She discovered that an investigative reporter named Michael Delacroix, known for his exposes on corporate malfeasance, had been asking questions about Thomas Sterling. If the press got hold of Danielle's evidence, the fallout could be catastrophic for both Thomas and any unsuspecting co-conspirators. Cautiously, Danielle weighed her options. If she handed over the Project Dawn files to Delacroix, the story would explode overnight. The media would swarm, and Thomas might be arrested swiftly, or worse, he might flee the country with a well-placed network of allies. Danielle didn't want him to vanish before she secured her and her baby's safety. She preferred a more controlled approach. In the background, Julia Barnes laid down a legal groundwork. She prepared potential restraining orders in case Thomas turned violent or attempted to coerce Danielle into silence. She also arranged for an off-the-record conversation with a district attorney's liaison, hinting that a major real estate fraud case could be on the horizon. If and when Danielle delivered the evidence, the DA's office would be ready to pounce. But first, Danielle needed that airtight confession. Thomas, however, was becoming a ghost. He drifted in and out of the penthouse at odd hours, sometimes not returning until the following afternoon. His phone rang incessantly with calls he wouldn't take in Danielle's presence. She recognized Julia Parker's name on the caller ID more than once. Tension coiled like a snake, threatening to strike at any moment. One evening, Danielle faked a panic attack so intense that Thomas cancelled a meeting to rush back home. She was hunched on the living room sofa, breathing erratically, tears streaming down her face. When he stepped inside, she clung to him, sobbing about nightmares of being chased by shadowy figures. Her performance was Oscar-worthy, fueled by genuine desperation to protect her child. Thomas was rattled. He sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands. Danielle seized the chance. "Why won't you tell me what's really going on?" "I know something is wrong. I feel it." He exhaled sharply, his shoulders trembling. For a second, she thought he might unburden his soul. Yet the moment passed as he regained composure. "Danielle, this is just business pressure. You wouldn't understand. I promise you, everything will be fine once these deals close. You need to rest." She forced herself to nod, every fiber of her wanting to scream accusations. But she played the frightened wife instead, whispering, "Just hold me for a while." He obliged, wrapping an arm around her. Under the glare of the penthouse lights, he looked more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. The man who once seemed unshakable was crumbling, and that meant she was getting closer to the truth. Meanwhile, her hidden recording devices captured every rustle, every sigh, every half-spoken admission. Danielle sifted through hours of audio, searching for a direct statement that would tie Thomas to the fraud beyond any doubt. References to offshore accounts or shell companies were frequent but indirect. She needed him to directly confess that he was knowingly breaking the law. Time was running short. Her due date loomed, and the stress was wreaking havoc on her health. She could barely keep food down. She needed a final push, something dramatic enough to make Thomas reveal his hand. The question was how to orchestrate the perfect moment, ensuring he felt safe enough or cornered enough to confess it all. Fate intervened in the form of a sudden, sharp pain that shot through Danielle's abdomen. She was 8 months pregnant, anxiously awaiting the birth of a baby who could arrive any day now. One evening, as she prepared a simple meal, a crippling cramp buckled her knees. Alarmed, she dialed her OB-GYN and was told to rush to the hospital for monitoring. Thomas, in a rare display of paternal urgency, helped her into the car and whisked her away. At the hospital, the medical staff performed an ultrasound. Fortunately, the baby was fine, but the doctor recommended an overnight stay to observe Danielle's blood pressure and contraction patterns. Thomas stayed by her side, pacing the corridor while the machines beeped in the background. Around midnight, a nurse named Jennifer Green, a name known for her expertise in high-risk pregnancies at Mount Sinai, entered to check Danielle's vitals. She mentioned quietly that stress could exacerbate Danielle's symptoms, urging Thomas to help her remain calm. As the clock ticked closer to dawn, Danielle feigned another emotional breakdown. She clutched her stomach, sobbing about the baby's safety, her own guilt at being a terrible wife, and the suffocating fear that everything was falling apart. Thomas, already exhausted, sat on a stool near the bed, burying his face in his hands. "Why? Why do we keep suffering like this? Danielle managed between sobs. I know there's more going on than just business deals. A fresh wave of tears fell. Please, Thomas. I need you to be honest with me. Thomas rocked back, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He exhaled heavily. Danielle, I never wanted you to get dragged into this. You were supposed to have a perfect life. His voice cracked as he mumbled, I made some moves, bad ones. But it's too late to back out now. Heartbeat thundering in her ears, Danielle gently reached under her blanket, making sure the small recording device was active. She forced her voice to stay calm. Why? I can't handle living with these secrets. Tell me what you did, Thomas. If you trust me at all, just say it. Desperation shone in his eyes. Words tumbled out in halting confessions. Project Dawn. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. But Julia and I, we expanded. Flipped properties, forged documents, laundered money to pay off debts. We manipulated prices, bribed appraisers. I thought it was the only way to keep everything afloat. Danielle's pulse soared. She blinked away tears, simultaneously listening to the golden words that would seal his fate. How long? She whispered. Thomas shook his head, visibly unraveling. Years. Started even before we got married. I didn't know how to stop. We're in too deep. Julia threatened to expose me if I bailed. We'll both be ruined if this comes out. For a moment, silence blanketed the room, broken only by the steady beep of the fetal monitor. Danielle's tears flowed freely now, both from heartbreak and the knowledge that she finally had the proof she needed. She inched her hand out to squeeze his. With a trembling voice, she said, "We can still find a way out. We can make this right." She didn't specify how. The lie hung in the air like a lifeline Thomas desperately wanted to believe in. He leaned over the hospital bed, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I never wanted this for you or the baby. I was just so greedy, so stupid." She gently pulled him in, her free hand covering the lump under her blanket where the recording device lay, capturing every last syllable. Danielle had never felt more conflicted. Her heart ached, yet a fierce sense of triumph burned in her veins. Because after that night, there would be no turning back. Thomas Sterling's confession was sealed. Danielle was discharged the next day, both relieved and burdened by her newfound power. The recording device was safely tucked away in her purse, containing all the incriminating evidence she needed. Thomas was uncharacteristically gentle as he helped her into the car, so much so that she almost wanted to believe his apologies had been genuine. But she reminded herself of the bigger picture. Thomas might feel remorse, but it was overshadowed by years of deception and criminal activity. At home, the tension between them simmered quietly. Thomas hovered around her, asking if she needed pillows adjusted or a special diet, or anything else to ease her last month of pregnancy. Danielle forced polite smiles, feigning vulnerability. Part of her longed to forgive him. She had once loved him deeply, but a harsher part knew that any compassion could blind her to the immediate danger. She had to see this through. Meanwhile, back in South Carolina, Danielle's parents, Mark and Evelyn Thompson, grew concerned. They sensed something was off each time they spoke on the phone. Danielle's voice had a tremor, and she was evasive about Thomas's role as a supportive husband. They considered flying up to New York, but Danielle convinced them she was simply overwhelmed with the pregnancy. Her friend Sarah, however, was not so easily placated. She visited the penthouse, seeing firsthand the dark circles around Danielle's eyes and the forced politeness between the couple. After Thomas excused himself to the study, Sarah demanded an explanation. Unable to hold back any longer, Danielle opened up. "I have proof, Sarah. He's involved in something huge. And I'm going to expose him." Sarah's eyes widened. She took Danielle's hand. "Are you sure that's safe? What if he—" "I know," Danielle interrupted, voice trembling. "But I can't live a lie anymore, and I won't let our baby be born into this nightmare." It has to end. Sarah nodded solemnly. I'm here for you, whatever you need. She paused, her face reflecting the fear they both felt. Just be careful. Later that evening, Danielle approached the next stage of her plan. She told Thomas she wanted to keep their marriage intact, that she was ready to stand by him, no matter what. She even suggested they talk to a counselor or a fixer who could help sort out the legal troubles quietly. He seemed surprised, but not entirely opposed. The weariness in his eyes spoke volumes. He was drained from carrying the burden of his crimes. Yet behind Danielle's reassuring words was a very different intention. She quietly reached out to Julia Barnes, providing her with the recorded audio. Barnes was both astonished and alarmed. It was even more incriminating than she expected. They decided that a legal confrontation was unavoidable. Barnes recommended they arrange a private meeting with the district attorney's liaison, possibly culminating in a sealed indictment and a carefully staged arrest to prevent Thomas from fleeing. The emotional cost weighed heavily on Danielle. Her nights were restless with nightmares of Thomas being handcuffed, of her child one day asking why their father wasn't around. But then she recalled the hospital confession, the look in his eyes as he admitted to forging documents, laundering money, and defrauding countless victims. For years, Thomas had lived a life of deceit and greed. She asked herself a question that offered a grim answer. If he's not held accountable, will he ever truly change? The day of reckoning arrived in a swirl of conflicting emotions. Danielle, barely able to stand on swollen feet, made her way to the district attorney's office. Julia Barnes was at her side, carrying a secure briefcase. Inside it lay the Project Dawn documents, originals and copies, and the digital file containing Thomas's recorded confession. They were ushered into a conference room with plain white walls, a long table, and a single pitcher of water. Two assistant DAs joined them, their solemn faces betraying the gravity of the situation. Danielle's heart thumped as she handed over the evidence. She recounted the highlights of Thomas's confession, careful to keep her composure. She explained she was terrified of retaliation, terrified that her child would be born into chaos, but also determined that justice be served. The meeting concluded with a quiet sense of finality. The DA's team assured Danielle they had enough to pursue charges of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering against Thomas Sterling, Julia Parker, and any other co-conspirators they could trace. Danielle left the building, tears streaming down her face. It felt like a betrayal of the man she once loved, yet also like a necessary act to protect herself and her baby. By the time she returned to the penthouse, Thomas was waiting in the living room, dressed casually but exuding a tense energy. He offered her a glass of water, his eyes filled with concern. "Danielle, you look pale. The doctor said you shouldn't be overexerting yourself." She managed a weak smile, heart pounding at the knowledge of what she'd just done. "I'm fine, just a little stressed about the baby." He nodded, perhaps mistaking her trembling for pregnancy nerves. As the evening wore on, he tried to engage her in small talk, baby names, nursery colors, even a possible family vacation once the child was old enough to travel. It was surreal, discussing such normal aspects of life while the sword of justice dangled overhead, ready to crash down on him at any moment. At one point, Thomas quietly admitted he felt guilty for neglecting her during her pregnancy. "I know I haven't been the best husband," he confessed, eyes cast downward. "When I look at you, I see how much love you have, and I don't know how to say I'm sorry." Danielle felt a pang in her chest, torn between empathy and anger. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby's slight kick. "It's been hard," she said, her voice quivering. "I just wish we could have been honest with each other." Thomas swallowed hard. For a moment, it looked as though he might break down completely, but he steadied himself. "We'll figure it out," he murmured. That night, Danielle slept in the guest room, claiming it offered more comfort for her aching back. In reality, she needed space to grapple with the emotional avalanche of what she had set in motion. She wept into her pillow, reliving memories of their whirlwind romance, the lavish wedding, the moments when he would cradle her in his arms and promise the world. All those promises, she thought bitterly, were built on a mountain of lies. Sometime around midnight, she heard him shuffling outside the door, murmuring her name. She feigned sleep. She couldn't face him just yet. Tomorrow or the next day, the DA's office would move. An arrest warrant might arrive at dawn, or perhaps at a time carefully chosen to catch Thomas off guard. Danielle found no comfort in revenge. She felt only a hollow ache for the dreams that had died and the uncertain future that stretched before her. The moment came in the quiet of a Tuesday afternoon. Danielle was resting on the living room couch, her feet propped up on cushions. Thomas was on his phone, pacing near the window. Then came a firm knock at the door. Alarmed, he turned to Danielle, who shrugged weakly. She watched, her pulse racing, as he opened it to find two plainclothes detectives and a uniformed officer. "Thomas Sterling?" one detective inquired, holding out a folded paper. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering." Time seemed to slow. Thomas's face went pale. His phone slipped from his hand, landing with a clatter on the polished floor. He tried to stammer out words, denial or confusion, but the detective stepped forward methodically. They turned him around, snapping cuffs around his wrists. Danielle sat up, feeling faint, tears spilling down her cheeks. She didn't move, couldn't move. She watched as the man she married was led away, the front door closing behind them with a hollow thud. The penthouse was silent, except for her ragged breathing. She felt both a crushing sense of loss and a swell of relief. The facade was over. In the days that followed, the media erupted with the scandal. News outlets plastered Thomas Sterling's face across front pages, alongside speculation about the extent of the fraud. Julia Parker, too, was arrested attempting to board a flight to Europe. The DA's office confirmed that the case was built on irrefutable evidence, including audio recordings of Thomas himself describing the illegal scheme. But amid the public spectacle, Danielle had her own private battle to fight. The stress took a toll on her health, and one evening she was rushed to the hospital in early labor. Sarah was at her side, holding her hand as she endured contractions. Danielle's parents arrived, panic etched across their faces. Over 19 hours, her body fought through every wave of pain and anxiety until, finally, she gave birth to a baby boy. She named him Gabriel, drawing from her favorite painting by a Renaissance master, depicting the angel Gabriel's annunciation of hope. Holding him in her arms for the first time, she realized this was why she had to do everything she did. He was a fresh start, an embodiment of innocence in a world marred by deceit. Meanwhile, Thomas remained in custody, denied bail because of flight risks. His legal team scrambled, but the evidence was overwhelming. The Project Dawn files, corroborated by Danielle's recordings and testimonies from appraisers who turned state's evidence, formed a case that prosecutors deemed ironclad. A court date was set to determine the final charges and sentencing. Some nights, Danielle lay awake, Gabriel sleeping peacefully in a hospital bassinet beside her, wondering if she had truly done the right thing. She had loved Thomas once, part of her always would. But each time she recalled his hospital confession, she knew that love without honesty was a brittle foundation. She had to break it apart to rebuild a better life for herself and her child. The swirl of public drama gradually receded. The tabloids moved on to new scandals, but the legal process churned on, slow and methodical. Danielle resolved to testify when the time came, ready to face Thomas across the courtroom. She would tell her truth, not out of vengeance, but to finally set herself free from the illusions that had bound her. Weeks turned into months. By the time Danielle walked into the courthouse, her arms cradling baby Gabriel, she felt an unexpected calm. Dressed in a simple black dress, she took her place in the witness stand, meeting Thomas's gaze for a fleeting second. There was sorrow in his eyes, perhaps regret. She couldn't be certain if he understood the magnitude of his wrongs, or if he simply mourned the downfall of his empire. Either way, it no longer mattered. She spoke clearly and unwaveringly, describing the night of his confession and the lengths he had gone to cover his crimes. In the end, the jury's verdict was swift, guilty on multiple counts. The judge's sentence would ensure Thomas's absence from Danielle's life for a long time. As the gavel pounded, Danielle closed her eyes, hugging Gabriel close to her chest. She thought of sunflower fields in Charleston, of Dr. Robert Jenkins's lessons about honesty, of all the tiny betrayals that had led her to this moment. Through it all, she found the strength to stand tall. This was not the fairy tale ending she once imagined. Yet, in a quiet, resolute way, it was a triumph. She had chosen truth and safeguarded her child. The cost was high, but so was the reward, a shot at a life free from hidden debts and half-truths. And that, Danielle realized, was the best happily ever after she could hope for. Pregnant wife confronts millionaire husband at a hotel bar after catching him with mistress. A hushed tension filled the opulent bar at the Plaza Hotel, where glittering chandeliers shimmered over velvet seats and polished floors. There, near the gleaming marble counter, stood Anna, her heart thundering, her pregnant belly a silent testament to months of secrets and suspicions. She couldn't tear her eyes away from Daniel, her billionaire husband, who was leaning far too close to a woman in a figure-hugging red dress. A swirl of betrayal and fury surged through Anna's veins, compelling her to take a step forward. Voices in her mind warned her to run, but she couldn't. She had come too far to simply turn back now. Anna Calhoun married Daniel Calhoun 3 years ago in a lavish ceremony that lit up the society pages. Every detail had been meticulously planned, the grand hall decorated with over 100,000 white roses, the custom lace gown from Vera Wang, the multi-tiered cake that shimmered under chandeliers. Their union was celebrated like a fairy tale come to life, but Anna never quite believed in perfect fairy tales. She knew that behind the sparkle of wealth there could be long shadows of ambition, secrecy, and unspoken resentments. Before marrying Daniel, Anna was a small-town girl from Ohio. Her father worked at a local auto parts factory, and her mother taught second-grade children. Anna's ambition was to move to a bustling city, maybe become a journalist or writer, to share stories of courage and transformation. Meeting Daniel was the biggest transformation of her life. He was everything she had ever imagined: tall, charismatic, financially successful beyond reason. His business empire, Calhoun Industries, owned a chain of global tech firms, real estate investments, and even a few luxury brands. By the time Anna met him at an art fundraiser in Manhattan, Daniel had already claimed the title of billionaire and the attention of every socialite in New York. They had a whirlwind romance, exclusive dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, spontaneous trips to Europe in his private jet, and passionate nights in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. Yet even in those heady days, Anna sometimes felt a rift forming. Daniel was always on his phone, dealing with urgent matters, whispering about investor calls. At first, she attributed it to the demands of high-stakes business. But over time, the phone calls grew more secretive, the late-night meetings more frequent, and the explanations less convincing. When Anna discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She hoped this would help them both reconnect and step away from the shadows that seemed to linger. But as her belly grew, Daniel seemed more distant than ever. Dinners at home became dinners alone. Business trips multiplied, and the rumors, those echoing whispers of a mistress, began to swirl among the staff of their penthouse. It was a housekeeper's accidental mention that first planted a seed of doubt in Anna's mind. There was talk of Daniel being seen at odd hours with a mysterious woman, a swirl of perfume clinging to his suits at times when he was allegedly just working late. She tried to confront Daniel, gently at first, but he brushed her off, blaming overwork and outside pressures. Anna wasn't satisfied, but she lacked concrete proof. With the pregnancy draining her energy, she buried her doubts, hoping her husband would come to his senses, or that her mind was simply exaggerating from hormones and stress. A love so strong couldn't just vanish, she convinced herself daily. She tried to recall the simple, genuine moments early in their relationship, nights of laughter and comfort, their shared dreams for a happy family. It was enough to keep her afloat, at least for a little while. One evening, Anna was in her study, once her writing nook, now more of a neglected corner, when the phone rang. Daniel had forgotten his personal phone at home. On the caller ID, an unfamiliar name flashed, Tessa. Something in Anna's chest tightened, a primal sense of dread. She answered. A female voice, sultry and self-assured, asked for Daniel. Anna struggled to keep her voice calm. "He's not here right now," Anna said. "May I ask who's calling?" "This is Tessa, his business associate," the woman replied. "We have a meeting scheduled in an hour. Just let him know I'll be waiting at the Golden Vine restaurant. He'll know what it's about." When Anna confronted Daniel about Tessa later, the expression on his face was fleeting, caught between guilt and feigned indifference. He insisted Tessa was just a new consultant he'd hired to help with a deal overseas. In typical Daniel fashion, he pivoted the conversation, making Anna feel childish for suspecting anything. But the weight in her chest refused to fade. As the weeks passed, more odd incidents surfaced. Jewelry receipts in Daniel's briefcase that didn't match anything Anna had ever seen. Cryptic texts on his phone that he shielded from view. He started wearing cologne she'd never smelled before. Where once he would come home from an overseas trip, eager to hold her, now he walked in, phone pressed to his ear, barely acknowledging her presence. The baby in her belly kicked more vigorously each time a new wave of doubt battered her heart, as if the little life inside her sensed the tension. Late one night, Anna found herself pacing the bedroom. She touched the framed photo from their wedding, her reflection glimmering in the glass. She remembered how safe she felt in Daniel's arms, how he promised to protect her from life's harsh winds. Yet here she was, uncertain, anxious, desperate for answers. She was pregnant and exhausted, but a fierce resolve flickered within her. She would find the truth, no matter the cost. The decisive clue came from someone Anna least expected to help, Daniel's younger sister, Alicia. While Alicia wasn't particularly close with Anna, they had had their share of frosty interactions at family gatherings. She had a streak of empathy for the unborn baby. Alicia worried about Anna's health under so much stress. With eyebrows furrowed, Alicia confessed that she overheard Daniel talking about meeting Tessa at the Plaza Hotel bar in New York City. He was apparently quite insistent on secrecy. Alicia suspected it wasn't the first time they'd met there. Anna's heart hammered. The Plaza Hotel was famous for its exclusivity. The bar, adorned with classic decor and a refined ambiance, was a hotspot for discreet high society meetups. If Daniel was meeting Tessa there, it wasn't for a simple business chat. Anna realized she had to see it with her own eyes. She wouldn't rest until she had the unfiltered truth. She waited for the right moment. Daniel mentioned a business meeting scheduled for Friday evening. His manner was evasive, and he declined to give more details. That was enough for Anna. She planned meticulously, rehearsing scenarios. One moment she felt confident, steeled by righteous anger. The next, she was consumed by heartbreak, wishing she could bury her head in the sand. But in the end, the baby's well-being fueled her determination. She needed to know if this marriage, this life she was building, was a lie. Friday evening arrived, carrying a cold wind that rustled through the streets of Manhattan. Anna stepped out of a taxi a block away from the plaza. She wore a simple black maternity dress that clung to her swollen belly. She felt every bit the wronged heroine in a tragic play, but she forced herself to keep going. The doorman recognized her from past events. She offered a tight-lipped smile and prayed he wouldn't make a fuss. Luckily, he didn't. She glided into the lobby, heart pounding like thunder. Light from the grand chandeliers sparkled across the marble floors, reminiscent of a star-filled sky. She could barely hear the piano music in the background over the roar in her ears. Every footstep echoed like a final countdown to the confrontation. She found her way to the bar, a dimly lit space with plush seating and a sophisticated hush. She paused near a large palm plant, scanning the room. Then she saw them, Danielle and Tessa, at a small corner table, heads bent close, a bottle of expensive champagne half consumed. Tessa's laughter cut through the hush like a blade, confident and almost mocking. Her hand rested on Daniel's wrist. The spark in his eyes, so foreign to Anna these days, made Anna's stomach churn. Anna nearly turned around, wanting to escape the agony, but something in her refused to run. The baby stirred, giving her courage. She stepped forward, each step measured. She reached their table, her shadow falling over the pair, who looked up in surprise. Daniel's expression twisted into panic, while Tessa's red lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile. The moment felt suspended in time. Anna realized every fear, every suspicion had been warranted. She inhaled deeply and spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Daniel, I see your business meeting is going well." Daniel stood so abruptly that his chair screeched across the marble floor. Eyes from other guests darted toward the commotion. Tessa, with an unsettling composure, calmly sipped from her glass. Anna could see the condescension in her gaze, as though Tessa relished the scene. "Anna," Daniel began, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Why are you here?" Anna tightened her grip on her purse strap. Her voice was cold and steady. "I think the better question is why you're here." She looked pointedly at Tessa, then at the half-empty champagne bottle. The golden bubbles sparkled like shattered trust, and with her, no less, the hush in the bar intensified. Daniel's face flushed. Tessa slowly stood, adjusting the folds of her glamorous red dress. She wore an emerald necklace that glimmered in the low light, a necklace that Anna recognized from a suspicious jewelry receipt she'd once found. "I don't think we need a scene," Tessa said lightly, looking around as if annoyed by the attention. Her confidence stoked Anna's anger. Tessa turned to Daniel with a smirk. "Maybe we should go somewhere else." "You're not going anywhere," Anna interjected, leveling her gaze at both of them. The baby shifted in her belly, an echo of the turmoil raging inside her. "Daniel, explain. Right here, right now." Daniel glanced around at the onlookers. He lowered his voice, attempting to steer them toward a more private corner. But Anna refused to move. She wanted the truth, wanted it in public, if that's what it took to finally shatter the lies. When Daniel didn't speak, Tessa decided to fill the silence. "Anna, darling," she purred, "I'm sure this is all very confusing for you in your condition. But Daniel and I have business that involves negotiations, consultations, that sort of thing. He just wanted a quieter place to talk. That's all." Anna bristled at Tessa's condescending tone. "It's quite a negotiation," she spat. "Necklaces, champagne, an intimate corner booth. Really, I'd love to hear the details of this lucrative contract." She turned again to Daniel. "Is this where all your late nights and secretive phone calls have gone? Is she your strategy to expand your empire?" Daniel pressed his lips into a grim line, cheeks burning with shame. He mumbled that they should leave the bar to discuss things privately, but Anna's fury was unstoppable. "Go on," she demanded, tears threatening to escape. "I want to hear you say it. Tell me that what I'm seeing is just business." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. The tension drew audible gasps from nearby patrons. Anna's heart pounded with the velocity of betrayal. She realized in that moment how deeply she had hoped to be wrong. Even confronted with evidence, she'd clung to the desperate belief that there might be a misunderstanding. But Daniel's silence roared the truth. Her husband, the one person she trusted above all else, had shattered her world. Slowly, she felt the heat of her fury give way to an icy numbness. She placed a protective hand over her belly. It was a subtle gesture, but it spoke volumes. She might be broken, but she wasn't alone. Life thrived within her, and she would protect it at any cost. Tessa took a step back, eyes flicking to Daniel. "I think I'll leave you two to figure this out." "Daniel, call me when you—" "Don't you dare walk away," Anna snapped, surprising even herself with the force in her voice. "Not until I get an answer." She was tired of being brushed aside, tired of letting others dictate her life. If Tessa thought she could simply slip away, she was mistaken. Under the weight of her glare, Tessa paused. An uneasy silence stretched. Daniel opened and closed his fists at his sides, clearly struggling to maintain composure in front of the growing crowd. "Anna," Daniel whispered, his eyes pleading, "let's go upstairs. We can reserve a private suite here at the plaza, just to talk." "Please, not here. You've done plenty here already," Anna said, voice trembling with a mix of heartbreak and rage. "No. Whatever you have to say it now. In front of me, this crowd, and your mistress." A hush blanketed the room as Daniel inhaled a shaky breath. For a moment, guilt glimmered in his eyes. Then, as if a dam had burst, words began tumbling out. He admitted he'd been seeing Tessa for a few months, initially for business advice. One deal led to after meeting drinks, which led to something more. He hadn't meant for it to happen, but it did. He was ashamed. He claimed he still loved Anna and wanted to make things right, but he was in so deep. He didn't know how to pull himself out. Anna stood there, trembling, tears burning behind her eyes. She felt the eyes of the bar upon her, some pitying, some judging. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to rage at the unfairness of it all. Instead, she managed a choked whisper, "After meeting drinks? You had an affair while I carried our child." Daniel flinched. Tessa, to her credit, seemed momentarily uncomfortable. Or perhaps that was just Anna, imagining a flicker of shame. Tessa's mask of confidence never slipped far. "I didn't expect things to go this far," Tessa offered, as though that was any consolation. Anna couldn't bear to stand there any longer. She turned on her heels, ignoring Daniel's pleas to wait. She hurried out of the bar, the clack of her heels echoing loudly in her ears. The baby shifted again, and Anna fought back the tears until she was safely out of sight. Only once she reached the lobby restroom did she let the sobs break free. Anna locked herself in a spacious stall and let her tears flow freely. She pressed her head against the cool tile wall, feeling a world of anguish crashing over her. The memory of Tessa's smirk, Daniel's faltering excuses, and the pitying glances of strangers all merged into a suffocating cloud. She looked down at her swollen belly. The baby was due in a few months. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, voice trembling. She had to protect her child, but how? Her entire life, her marriage, her trust, her sense of security was unraveling. She realized this was more than just an affair. It was a betrayal of vows, of a foundation they had promised to build together. Anger flared up once again, mingling with desperation. She wiped her tears and pulled her phone from her purse, ignoring the chaos of missed calls and frantic messages from Daniel. She dialed Alicia's number. "I caught him," Anna managed, voice unsteady. Alicia's gasp on the other end was all the confirmation she needed. Alicia offered to come pick her up, but Anna declined. She wanted no more humiliation for the night, no more public scenes. With a shaky determination, she left the restroom and headed for the elevator banks. If Daniel wanted to talk privately, she would give him the chance, if only to secure clarity for herself and for her unborn child. She pressed the call button, eyes catching her reflection in the mirrored wall, puffy eyes, smudged makeup, heartbreak etched into every line of her face. The elevator dinged open. She stepped inside, fists clenched. She would face Daniel, but on her terms. And she would find out just how deep his lies ran. On the 15th floor of the plaza, Daniel had hastily booked a suite. A trembling bellhop led Anna to a door, his eyes darting nervously between Anna's tear-streaked face and the plush hallway. He seemed to sense the tension and hurried away the moment he set down her suitcase of belongings that she had spontaneously grabbed from the penthouse before following Daniel. Anna paused outside the door, breath uneven. She knew Daniel was inside, waiting. She could almost feel his guilt seeping through the walls. But she had to do this. After a few seconds, she slid the keycard through the lock and entered. Daniel stood near the large bay window overlooking Fifth Avenue. City lights twinkled like fallen stars, a stark contrast to the turmoil within the room. He turned, eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Anna shut the door softly behind her. She kept her back against it, as though needing physical support. "You wanted privacy," she said in a low tone. "Now we have it. Talk." Daniel cleared his throat. "Anna, I'm sorry. I never intended to hurt you. Things just spiraled. Tessa was helping me with a new tech expansion in Europe. We started spending time together, and it got complicated." "That's all?" Anna asked bitterly. "You got bored with your pregnant wife at home, so you decided to spend time with another woman?" Shame flickered in his eyes. "That's not how it started. But yes, that's where it ended up. And it was wrong. I hate myself for it." He stepped closer, but Anna held up a hand to stop him. "What about me? About us?" Her voice cracked. "Did you consider what this would do to me? Or to our child?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I was an idiot. I got caught up in the excitement, the secrecy. But it meant nothing, Anna. I swear. I care about you. I care about our baby." "Sure," Anna snapped. "When did you plan to mention the jewelry you bought her? Or the private dinners? Or the champagne in that bar? Because it sure looked like it meant something. Or were you going to wait until one accidentally walked in on you again?" He faltered, unable to produce a decent excuse. Anna felt a wave of nausea. The emotional stress, combined with her pregnancy, was overwhelming. She sank into an armchair, pressing a hand to her belly. Instantly, Daniel rushed to her side, concern flashing in his eyes. "Don't touch me," she hissed, though she was grateful to be seated. "You made your choices. Now deal with the consequences." For a moment, Daniel stood helpless, arms hovering as if wanting to support her. His voice was raw when he finally spoke. "I love you, Anna. This was a mistake, a terrible, regrettable mistake. But I need a chance to fix this. I can break it off with Tessa immediately. I'll do anything you want. Just, please don't leave me." Anna stared at him, disbelief roiling in her gut. "You think it's that easy? Just end it with Tessa, and everything goes back to normal?" She let out a hollow laugh. "You lied to me for months. You made me question my sanity when I suspected you. You forced me to catch you red-handed for you to even admit the truth. You think I can just forget that?" Daniel's face fell, and tears shimmered in his eyes. He started to speak, but Anna held up a finger. She needed to say her piece. "Marriage is built on trust, and you've broken that trust in the cruelest way possible while I'm carrying our child. Even if I wanted to forgive you, I'm not sure I could. It hurts too much." A strangled sob escaped Daniel. In all the time Anna had known him, she had never seen him so vulnerable. He was a billionaire, used to controlling outcomes and paying his way out of problems. But here, in this suite, with the city lights behind him, he was just a man facing the wreckage of his actions. Anna felt the faint stirring of pity. But overshadowing that was rage, heartbreak, and a fierce maternal instinct to shield her unborn baby from further pain. "I need time," she whispered, voice heavy with exhaustion. "I need space to think. So many months you were with her. I don't know how to process that. I don't even know if I can." Daniel reached out a trembling hand. "I'll give you whatever you need. Please, let me make this right. I'll cut Tessa out. I'll see a counselor. His words tapered off as Anna shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It might be too late for that," she said softly, then rose from the chair. Before Daniel could protest, she walked toward the door. "I'm going home. Alone." He called out her name, but Anna walked down the corridor without looking back, stepping into an elevator that felt like a confessional booth. As the door slid shut, she wasn't sure if she was leaving just the suite or the life she and Daniel had built, because it was painfully clear that nothing would ever be the same again. Anna spent the night at their penthouse guest room, locking the door to keep Daniel out. She wanted distance, but ironically, her mind was racing through every detail of the confrontation, refusing to let her rest. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from Daniel, apologies, promises, pleas. She stared at them through bleary eyes, unsure if the man she once adored existed anymore. The next morning, Alicia arrived unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key. Anna was still in her nightgown, dark circles under her eyes. Alicia immediately enveloped her in a hug. It was the first act of genuine kindness Anna had felt in what seemed like ages, and it nearly broke her resolve. She wept into Alicia's shoulder, words tumbling out about how the affair had started, how Tessa was intimately involved in Daniel's new business projects, and how everything felt irreparably shattered. Alicia stroked her hair and listened patiently. "I had a bad feeling," Alicia murmured. "Daniel's been so secretive, even with me. I wish I'd told you sooner. I'm sorry." Anna pulled away, wiping her tears. "It's not your fault. Daniel made his choice. I don't know how to handle it." Alicia hesitated, then admitted, "There's more you should know. I didn't mention it because I wasn't sure, but I suspect Tessa isn't just a random consultant. She's been linked to other powerful men, and word is she uses her relationships to gain control in business deals. There are rumors that she blackmails them." Anna's stomach lurched. "Blackmail? You think Daniel?" Alicia sighed. "I don't know, but Tessa's not the type to let a billionaire slip through her fingers without some gain, especially if it ends badly." This revelation weighed on Anna like a boulder. The baby kicked, as if sensing her tension. She realized that the nightmare might stretch beyond personal betrayal into scandal, threats, public humiliation. Could Tessa have planned all this, seeing Daniel as a ticket to wealth and power? At that moment, Daniel knocked softly on the guest room door. "Anna? Alicia? Can I come in?" Anna looked to Alicia, who gave a subtle nod. Anna cracked open the door. Daniel stood there, looking disheveled, eyes rimmed with red. He glanced at Alicia but focused on Anna. "We need to talk. It's urgent." He inhaled sharply. "I got word this morning that Tessa's threatening to leak details of our relationship to the media unless I pay her a large sum. She also hinted at some damaging files, some corporate deals that she claims could ruin my reputation. I swear I didn't know about any blackmail. She's never asked for money until now, but apparently she's recorded conversations, has photos. Anna, if this gets out, it could ruin everything." Anna's head spun. Alicia shot her a pointed look. This was exactly what she'd feared. Anna braced herself, swallowing the bitter taste of betrayal. Her voice was icy. "So now you want my help?" After humiliating me in front of half of New York, Daniel wiped a hand over his face. "I deserve that. But yes, I need your help. I can't handle this alone." And his gaze flickered to Anna's stomach. I want to make sure our child doesn't grow up with a father in disgrace. I know you might not want to be with me anymore, but please, at least help me face this problem." A swirl of conflict tore through Anna. Part of her wanted to say no, to let Daniel stew in the mess he created. But she knew the scandal would drag her down as well and possibly harm the baby. Reluctantly, she nodded. "We'll talk, but don't expect forgiveness." Seated around the living room table, Anna, Alicia, and Daniel pored over the text messages Tessa had sent. The demands were explicit. A $5 million payment transferred discreetly to an offshore account in exchange for her silence. She threatened to leak incriminating pictures and audio to tabloids if Daniel refused. There was a mention of a tech competitor who would love to see Daniel's empire crumble. It was a twisted labyrinth of threats, secrets, and potential ruin. Anna felt sick reading Tessa's smug words. "She's basically using your affair as leverage to blackmail you," she said, voice shaking. "You gave her everything she needed, Daniel. How could you be so careless?" He bowed his head. "I was blinded by lust, by stupidity. I never thought she'd do this." "Well, she did," Alicia snapped. "So what's the plan? Pay her? Go to the police? Try to reason with her?" Daniel stared at the text messages, despair etched into his features. Paying her might only encourage more demands. Going to the police would make this public and a huge scandal. If she really has incriminating material about my business deals, it could trigger an investigation. My investors would pull out. The board would lose faith. We could lose billions. Anna's frustration peaked. "So your primary concern is your business?" He lifted his eyes, desperation and regret mingling. "No, I'm worried about us, about you and the baby. I know I messed up, but I still have responsibilities to everyone who works at my companies, to our employees and shareholders. If Tessa's threats are real, a scandal of that magnitude could destroy countless livelihoods. I need to handle this carefully." Anna exhaled heavily, forcing herself to remain calm. "Fine. So what do we do?" They brainstormed. Alicia suggested contacting a top-notch security firm. Anna recommended gathering any evidence they had that could discredit Tessa. Daniel hesitated, worrying that might spur Tessa to release her dirt sooner. Eventually, they decided to meet Tessa on neutral ground, a private law office under the guidance of Daniel's legal counsel, to see if they could negotiate a resolution without succumbing to blackmail or inciting further wrath. Anna felt her heart pounding as they arranged the meeting for the next day. Part of her still reeled from the personal betrayal. Now she was thrown into corporate intrigue that could overshadow everything else. She realized with dismay that Tessa hadn't just hurt her marriage, she had inserted herself into the very framework of Daniel's world, and by extension, Anna's world too. The next day, Anna arrived at the high-rise law firm with Alicia and Daniel. A team of attorneys awaited them in a gleaming conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Tessa was scheduled to appear in an hour. The tension was palpable. Anna sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, hands clasped over her belly. She wished she were anywhere else. She scanned the array of serious suits, Daniel's top corporate lawyer, a crisis manager who specialized in high-profile scandals, and a private investigator discreetly situated in a corner. Everyone murmured in hushed voices, analyzing possible outcomes. The clock ticked ominously until the moment Tessa swept in, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit and exuding an air of supreme confidence. She didn't come alone. Her own attorney, a sharp-faced woman with a briefcase, followed close behind. Tessa's eyes locked onto Daniel, then darted to Anna. A flicker of something akin to contempt passed over her features. "Shall we sit?" Tessa said coolly, gesturing to the table. Her attorney placed a stack of documents before them. "We can keep this simple. I have what I have, you have the funds you have. Let's not complicate matters. Anna's anger burned. She wanted to scream at Tessa for daring to speak so casually after everything she'd done. But she kept silent, letting Daniel's lawyers take the lead. They questioned the validity of Tessa's supposed evidence, demanded proof. Tessa smirked and played an audio snippet on her phone. Daniel's voice discussing sensitive information about an upcoming merger, coupled with flirtatious banter. It was enough to make Anna's stomach churn and enough to prove Tessa did have leverage. The negotiation spiraled into a tense standoff. Tessa demanded immediate payment. Daniel's team insisted on partial disbursement only after Tessa signed a non-disclosure agreement and handed over all evidence. Tessa's lawyer coolly retorted that a single payment was non-negotiable, or the media would receive a juicy scandal. Anna fought the urge to slam her fist on the table. Instead, she said quietly, "Tessa, why are you doing this? You already had Daniel. You had the affair. Isn't that what you wanted?" Tessa glanced at Anna, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "What I want is to be compensated for my time and expertise. This is business, Anna. Don't take it so personally. Daniel and I had a relationship, yes, but that's not the real story here. The real story is the power I hold, power you were never going to have." Daniel clenched his jaw, about to respond, but Anna's gentle but firm voice cut him off. "You talk about power as though it's everything, but real power isn't about money or blackmail. It's about respect, loyalty, empathy, things you clearly know nothing about." Tessa's eyes flickered with disdain, but she stayed silent. Her lawyer, however, pressed the matter, returning to the demands. Hours ticked by. Negotiations punctuated by tense silences, phone calls, half-hearted compromises. In the end, no agreement was reached. Tessa refused to budge on her single-payment ultimatum. Daniel's lawyers refused to release such a vast sum without guaranteed destruction of all evidence. As Tessa rose to leave, she shot a parting remark, chilling and succinct. "You have 48 hours to decide, Daniel. After that, the tapes go public. And trust me, once they do, your entire world will crumble." Then she swept out, leaving the conference room in a state of shock. Night fell, and the law office cleared out. Daniel, Alicia, and Anna remained, quietly discussing next steps with the crisis manager, a man named Robert Gaines. He laid out the stark reality. If Tessa released the incriminating evidence, Daniel's personal and professional reputation would be in shambles. Investors would flee, lawsuits could ensue, and the scandal would ripple into Anna's life, their unborn child's future, and every philanthropic endeavor the Calhoun name was tied to. Alicia fumed, pacing back and forth. "She's bluffing. She must be bluffing," she insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. Daniel ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm not sure. Even if half of it is bluff, the other half is still damaging." Anna rubbed her temples, exhaustion gripping her. "What do we do, Robert?" Robert adjusted his tie, the strain of the day etched on his face. "My recommendation is to gather any counter-evidence or to secure an injunction against Tessa, though that process could take time. Alternatively, if you believe Tessa truly won't budge, paying her might be your quickest path out, though ethically. I never recommend capitulating to blackmail." Anna frowned. The idea of simply handing over millions to the woman who wrecked her marriage made her stomach churn. But the stakes were terrifying. She could already imagine tabloids running front-page headlines, "Billionaire's affair exposed. Pregnant wife betrayed." She imagined the paparazzi hounding her. The baby. The thought filled her with dread. She turned to Daniel, her voice weary. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about our child. If Tessa goes public, that scandal will follow our baby forever." Daniel's face tightened. I know, and that's what scares me most. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We have 48 hours. Let's see if we can find a way to discredit her. If we can prove she's blackmailed others, or if her evidence is doctored, we might weaken her position. Robert, can you get your investigator on that? Robert nodded. I'll start immediately. Good, Daniel said. And if it fails, we'll decide if paying her is a necessary evil. Anna and Alicia exchanged worried looks. This was not a simple negotiation, not a typical business deal. A wave of despair washed over Anna. She recalled the day she said I do to Daniel, believing in a bright future. Now, just a short time later, she was haggling with lawyers and crisis managers, dealing with the fallout of an affair she never dreamed possible. Yet, in the darkest corner of her heart, Anna felt a flicker of resolve. She wasn't just a victim. She was a mother. And for the sake of her child, she would find a way to navigate this hellish predicament, even if it meant facing unimaginable confrontations. Over the next day, Robert's investigator unearthed a trove of rumors tying Tessa to past blackmail attempts. However, most of those cases seemed carefully buried or settled out of court. No one wanted to go on record against her, likely fearing further exposure. Desperate, Anna took a different approach. She reached out to a source from her past, an old friend named Cora, who now worked as a journalist for the New York Times. Cora was known for her investigative tenacity. They met secretly at a small cafe in Midtown, far from the glitz of Daniel's usual haunts. Sitting across from Cora in a quiet booth, Anna explained the situation. She recounted Tessa's threats, the affair, the blackmail. She hadn't intended to share so many personal details, but she trusted Cora's discretion. Cora listened gravely, jotting notes in a small leather notebook. This Tessa sounds like a professional extortionist, Cora said. I might be able to tap some sources, see if there's anything I can dig up that's not publicly known. If I find something, it might help you turn the tables. Anna breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Thank you. Just, please keep my identity under wraps. I don't want a bigger scandal. Cora reached across the table, squeezing Anna's hand gently. I promise, I'll do what I can. Parting ways, Anna felt marginally hopeful. But as the hours ticked closer to Tessa's 48-hour deadline, anxiety gnawed at her. Daniel's entire team was on high alert. Alicia hovered near Anna like a protective sister, while Daniel immersed himself in strategy meetings. Late that evening, Cora called Anna. Her voice was tense. Anna, I dug around. It seems Tessa has ties to a known corporate saboteur. She's done this routine before: lure wealthy men, gather secrets, threaten them, or feed info to business rivals for profit. A chill coursed through Anna. So it's definitely bigger than just an affair. Absolutely, Cora confirmed. She's systematically targeted men who oversee lucrative deals. There's a rumor that she's connected to Winston Mackey, the head of a rival tech conglomerate. If that's true, she might be funneling your husband's secrets directly to him, or using them to manipulate Daniel into making bad decisions that favor Mackey's interests. Anna's mind whirled. Winston Mackey was a major competitor in Daniel's sphere. If Tessa was working with him, the stakes were even higher. Daniel's empire might not just suffer from scandal, it could be systematically dismantled. Thank you, Cora, Anna managed. This is huge. Use it wisely, Cora advised, and carefully. Armed with Cora's information, Daniel's crisis team launched into overdrive. If Tessa was feeding secrets to Winston Mackey, that constituted industrial espionage. They could threaten Tessa with a lawsuit or even criminal charges if she was found complicit. But they needed proof, and time was running out. The atmosphere in the penthouse felt electric with tension. Anna's phone pinged with a text message from Tessa, a mocking reminder of the deadline. now just 12 hours away. Alicia prowled the hallways, chewing her nails and cursing under her breath. Daniel retreated to his study with phone calls, trying to gather any intel on Mackie's potential involvement. Just before midnight, Robert, the crisis manager, announced they had enough circumstantial evidence to confront Tessa. While not a smoking gun, it might be enough to scare her into backing down or at least negotiating more favorably. Anna's stomach twisted with dread and morning sickness. She wished none of this was happening. She wished she could be a normal, expectant mother, worried about baby clothes and nursery colors, not blackmail and corporate sabotage. But fate had dealt her this hand, and she resolved to see it through. Strangely, Tessa insisted on meeting again at the Plaza Hotel bar. It was as if she reveled in the very place where Anna caught them. The irony wasn't lost on Anna. But Daniel's team agreed, hoping the public space would discourage Tessa from dramatic outbursts. When Anna arrived, her heart thundered with painful familiarity. The same chandeliers twinkled overhead, the same plush seating, but everything felt colder, sharper. She found Tessa sipping a martini in the corner booth, completely at ease. Her lawyer was absent this time, a power move to appear more personal, no doubt. Daniel, Robert, and Alicia joined Anna. Tessa raised an eyebrow, glancing over the group. "I take it you've decided to pay, then?" Daniel slid into a seat across from her. "Actually, we have some new information. We know you've been in contact with Winston Mackey. Sharing corporate secrets is corporate espionage. We have enough to file charges if you release anything you claim to have. And those charges could put you away for a long time." Tessa's smirk wavered, only slightly, but Anna caught it. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tessa replied, tossing her hair dismissively. Yet a flicker of uncertainty danced in her eyes. Robert pressed a folder to the table. Emails, phone logs, bank transfers. "You've been in discussions with a shell company that leads directly back to Mackey. If you expose any private data about Calhoun Industries, we'll have proof you did so with criminal intent." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "So what's this? A bluff? Try us." Alicia shot back, her voice ice cold. Anna watched Tessa's face carefully. Beneath that veneer of confidence, Anna spotted fear. The blackmail scheme was built on her advantage, an advantage that had now evaporated. She had power only if Daniel was scared, but now he had evidence that could ruin her. For a moment, Tessa seemed to calculate her next move. Then, with a sigh, she leaned back, swirling her martini. "Fine. You've done your homework, so let's talk real numbers." Daniel blinked. "Numbers? We just told you we can take this to court if you try anything." Tessa chuckled humorlessly. "And you'll cause a scandal in the process, right? You think the press won't cover a corporate espionage suit? Your dirty laundry will be aired out anyway. My guess is you still want this buried. So how about a reduced fee for my silence? 2 million. Not 5. I'll sign whatever agreement you want, and we all walk away unscathed." Anna felt her blood boil. Tessa was incorrigible, shifting tactics the moment she lost leverage. She was still demanding a fortune for secrecy. Robert coughed, turning to Daniel. This was the moment of decision. Fight and risk everything in a messy trial, or pay and end it quietly. Daniel looked at Anna, helplessness etched in his eyes. She knew what this meant. If Tessa agreed to keep silent, the scandal might be contained, the baby could be protected from a media circus. But it also meant letting Tessa win, to some extent. Anna's heart pounded with conflicting emotions. She didn't want Tessa to profit from her betrayal, yet the baby's future weighed heavily. Finally, Daniel spoke, voice measured. 2 million in exchange for all copies of the evidence, the NDA, and the guarantee of total silence. If you so much as utter my name to the press, we release our evidence of your espionage attempts. Understood? Tessa downed the last of her martini. Understood. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. Anna clenched her fists, holding back a storm of emotions. She hated that Tessa was getting away with so much, but she needed to protect herself, her child, and perhaps even Daniel's employees, who depended on his company's stability. The moral compromise stung like a fresh wound. After the confrontation, Tessa left with a triumphant smirk, but not without handing over a flash drive. She claimed it held everything: photos, audio, videos. Robert promised to verify it meticulously, ensuring Tessa wasn't holding back additional copies. Anna stood with Daniel near the bar's entrance, feeling drained and hollow. Alicia gave them space, stepping aside to make a phone call. The bartender discreetly avoided eye contact. Sensing the gravity, Daniel let out a trembling breath. "I'm sorry it came to this. Paying her, it feels wrong." Anna nodded wearily. "It is wrong, but we do what we have to, I suppose." Silence fell. Anna placed a hand on her belly, her thoughts swirling. She was relieved the immediate threat was contained, but heartbreak remained. The affair, Tessa's cruelty, the blackmail, it all left a permanent scar. Daniel began, hesitating. "I want you to know none of this was worth it. If I could turn back time, I'd give anything to fix what I broke between us." Anna stared at the chandelier overhead. For a moment, she pictured the wedding day again, the promised forever. Then Tessa's face intruded, mocking her naivete. "Daniel," she said softly, "this doesn't magically erase what happened. Even if Tessa vanishes, the pain remains. I don't know if I can forgive you." He bowed his head. "I understand." A long pause lingered. Anna finally mustered a flicker of compassion. "What happens to us now?" He looked at her with desperate hope. "We try therapy. We rebuild trust, if you'll let me. I'm not asking for miracles, just a chance to prove I'm not the man Tessa made me out to be. Please." Anna's throat constricted. She didn't answer immediately. She wanted to believe there was a path forward, especially for their child, but the wounds were too raw. "I need time," she whispered. "We'll see." Life settled into an uneasy routine. The immediate crisis with Tessa was resolved. Lawyers finalized the NDA and wire transfer. Robert's team verified the flash drive's contents before placing them in secure storage. For now, Tessa was gone, but the emotional wreckage remained. As the weeks passed, Anna tried to distance herself from the heartbreak. She attended prenatal checkups, focusing on the growing life inside her. Occasionally, Daniel accompanied her, offering quiet support, but Anna kept him at arm's length. Then, in a twist of fate that felt like cosmic retribution, Daniel's businesses took a series of hits unrelated to Tessa. A global economic downturn battered stock prices. A key investor withdrew from a major project at the last minute. Lawsuits unrelated to the scandal emerged, claiming patent infringements in one of Calhoun Industries' tech subsidiaries. It was a perfect storm, hitting Daniel from all sides. Anna watched as Daniel scrambled to keep the company afloat. Board members questioned his leadership. Rumors of the near scandal with Tessa spread quietly among a few insiders, eroding confidence further. Some whispered that Daniel had lost his edge, that he'd become too distracted by personal drama to steer the empire effectively. Despite the tension between them, Anna felt a pang of sympathy. She saw him come home late, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, the once confident swagger gone. But part of her also recognized this as a form of karma. He had betrayed his marriage, and now fate was punishing him in ways neither of them could have foreseen. One evening, as Daniel sat in his home office, staring at financial spreadsheets with despair, Anna entered quietly. She'd brought tea, a small gesture of peace. He glanced up, surprised. "Hey," he said, voice husky from sleepless nights. She offered a faint smile, placing the cup on his desk. "Chamomile. Thought you might need something calming." He sighed gratefully, taking a sip. "Thanks." Anna hesitated, unsure how to proceed. "I heard about the layoffs. That must be tough." He nodded. eyes clouded with guilt. It is. I hate letting people go. But if we don't cut costs, the company could collapse entirely. A wave of compassion swept over Anna. Despite everything, she remembered the side of Daniel who cared about people, who believed in building a legacy that helped others. Maybe there's another way, she offered gently. I know we're not in the best place, but if you want someone to brainstorm with, I'm here. Daniel's gaze softened, gratitude flickering in his tired eyes. I'd like that. I miss talking with you about anything really. Something in Anna's chest tightened. She missed it too. Days turned into hours of stiff politeness, overshadowed by the betrayal. Yet a thread of connection lingered. She pulled a chair closer, glancing over the reports. Let's see if we can find a strategy that minimizes job losses. Maybe restructure some departments, explore new partnerships. They delved into discussions, analyzing numbers and possible solutions. It was oddly reminiscent of their early days, when they'd talk excitedly about Daniel's business ideas. But now, the air was heavy with unspoken regret. At midnight, they realized they'd spent hours together, forging a tentative truce. Anna rubbed her belly, feeling the baby shift. Daniel watched with a mix of awe and sorrow. He reached a hand out, then paused, unsure if he was allowed to rest it on her stomach. Anna swallowed hard, then nodded. As Daniel's palm met the gentle curve of her pregnancy, the baby kicked. They both smiled, an instinctive, genuine moment of shared wonder. For a fleeting second, the distance between them shrank, replaced by a quiet sense of possibility. In the following weeks, Anna continued to help Daniel with strategies to stabilize the company. She wasn't a business prodigy, but her intuition and attention to detail offered fresh perspectives that Daniel's executives appreciated. Together, they implemented cost-saving measures without severe layoffs, opting for temporary pay cuts at the executive level instead. Morale improved. Investors took note. Slowly the ship began to right itself. Meanwhile, Anna's due date inched closer. She spent hours reading about childbirth, attending prenatal classes, and preparing the nursery. Daniel accompanied her on more appointments, carefully treading the fragile line between them. Neither had declared a final decision on the marriage. Anna's hurt was still there, but so was a cautious sense of rebuilding. Alicia noticed the shift, dropping by with baby gifts and supportive words. Even Robert, the crisis manager, commented on how the atmosphere around Daniel had improved. Tessa remained silent, likely well settled with her 2 million. The ghost of her betrayal lingered, but it didn't overshadow daily life as it once had. Still, Anna wrestled with her conflicted emotions. She found Daniel's efforts to redeem himself sincere. He cut off all questionable social ties, gave her full access to his communications, and started therapy sessions, both individual and with Anna, when she was willing. But trust was a delicate plant, and the wound was deep. Late one night, as thunder rumbled across the city skyline, Anna felt the first sharp pangs of labor. She was in bed, trying to sleep, when a contraction ripped through her abdomen. She gasped, panic racing up her spine. Quickly, she shook Daniel awake. His eyes flew open, instantly alert. Is it time? She nodded, breath hitching with pain. I think so. A rush of adrenaline hit them both. They grabbed the hospital bag, called Alicia, and sped through the rain-slicked streets to Mount Sinai Hospital. Nurses whisked Anna into a birthing suite, hooking her up to monitors. The baby's heartbeat filled the room with a rapid, comforting rhythm. Daniel stood by her side, holding her hand. She gritted her teeth through contractions, sweat beading her forehead. Fear mingled with excitement. This was the day they'd meet their child, a new life born from their turbulent union. Hours blurred into a haze of pain, pushing, tears. Daniel whispered encouragement, apologizing for every misstep, promising to be a better man, a better father. Anna focused on one singular goal: bring their baby safely into the world. Despite the heartbreak, the betrayal, in that moment she was grateful Daniel was there. At dawn, a shrill cry filled the room. Their son emerged, small and wrinkled and perfect. The nurse placed him on Anna's chest, and she burst into tears, overwhelmed by love so powerful. It erased every other thought. Daniel, tears streaming down his face, leaned in to kiss the baby's tiny forehead. They named him Benjamin, a name Anna had loved since childhood. Holding Benjamin, Anna felt the universe shift, as if everything else paled in comparison. She caught Daniel's gaze, and for a moment, forgiveness seemed possible. Not guaranteed, but attainable someday. In the days after Benjamin's birth, Anna and Daniel remained at the hospital, absorbing the joys and challenges of new parenthood. Their families visited, showering them with love and congratulations. Alicia was particularly overjoyed, snapping endless photos of her nephew. Anna noticed a transformation in Daniel. He spent hours cradling Benjamin, talking softly to him about the world, about values and dreams. It was a side of him Anna hadn't seen in a long time, gentle, vulnerable, real. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, the sight of Daniel as a doting father softened something in her heart. When they finally brought Benjamin home, Anna stepped into the nursery with awe. It was a tranquil space, soft pastel walls, a crib adorned with plush animals, a glider by the window overlooking the city. She placed Benjamin in the crib, watching as he dozed off, oblivious to the storms that had raged before his arrival. Daniel hovered in the doorway, hesitant. "Anna?" She turned, tired but content. "Yes?" He swallowed hard. "I just wanted to say I'm grateful for letting me be here, for giving me a chance to show up for our son. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am." Anna felt emotion welling up. "I appreciate that, I do." She glanced at Benjamin's sleeping form. "He deserves both of us at our best." Daniel nodded, stepping into the room. He tentatively wrapped an arm around Anna's shoulder. She didn't pull away. Together, they watched their newborn son breathe in gentle little sighs. The future was uncertain, but in that shared moment of parenthood, they found a fragile promise of hope. Time passed. Benjamin grew, and so did the complexities of Anna and Daniel's relationship. Therapy sessions became a weekly routine. Anna unpacked the betrayal, Daniel confronted his flaws, and they tentatively rebuilt trust. It wasn't linear. There were arguments, setbacks, nights Anna slept in the guest room. But there were also breakthroughs, moments of genuine closeness that hinted at a stronger bond than before. Professionally, Daniel fought tooth and nail to restore Calhoun Industries. Bit by bit, the company stabilized, regaining investor confidence. Reports praised Daniel's resilience, attributing it to his renewed focus. Only Anna and a few others knew the personal cost behind that focus. Then came the final twist of karma, Tessa's downfall. News broke that she'd attempted a similar blackmail on Winston Mackey himself, trying to extort money by threatening to leak false secrets about Mackey's company. But Mackey had set a trap, collaborating with law enforcement. Tessa was arrested on charges of attempted extortion and fraud. The tabloids devoured the scandal, though they never mentioned Daniel or Anna, thanks to the ironclad NDA. When Anna heard the news, she felt a weight lift. Tessa was finally facing the consequences of her actions. The chapter of fear was truly closing. A sense of poetic justice shimmered, as though the universe had balanced itself. By the time Benjamin celebrated his first birthday, Anna and Daniel found themselves in a more peaceful place. The affair and blackmail remained part of their history, an unerasable scar, but they had navigated through it together. Anna had witnessed Daniel's genuine remorse, his willingness to be better, and Daniel had discovered that true power, indeed, came from honesty, vulnerability, and respect. They threw a small birthday party at the penthouse, just family and close friends. Benjamin squealed with delight at the sight of balloons and cake, blissfully unaware of the drama that once threatened to tear his family apart. Anna caught Daniel's eye across the room, and he gave her a soft smile. She smiled back, a signal that while forgiveness wasn't absolute, love still had room to grow. Later that night, once everyone had gone and Benjamin was asleep, they stood on the balcony together, gazing at the shimmering cityscape. Daniel slipped a hand around her waist. "We've come a long way." Anna leaned into him, exhaling softly. "Yes, we have." They shared a quiet moment, each knowing the future remained unwritten. But for the first time in a long while, that uncertainty felt like possibility rather than dread. This story reminds us that trust can be torn apart in an instant and takes far longer to mend. Secrets, temptations, and betrayals don't just threaten our happiness, they challenge our very identity and the foundations we've built with those we love. When deception collides with loyalty, when ambition eclipses compassion, the fallout tests even the strongest bonds. Yet, amid the wreckage, hope can still find its way. Confronting our darkest mistakes, taking responsibility, and refusing to give in to blackmail or fear can lead to a path of redemption.